Actually, very much thank you, Dr. Jakob, because with your introduction, it saves me a lot of time on the explanation of info defense, right? Like the reason why this is extremely relevant in a world where anybody heard of Vitalik's pushing for DAC, decentralized, defensive, democratic acceleration of technology? Show of hands from the audience. Right, this is not necessarily a very popular concept here, I guess. I hope I can give it a little bit more introduction. And so this topic might be a little bit for veteran users of decentralized technologies in the space. Bear with me if you are a little bit lost, but I think at the end of the day, this solution offers much more value to emergent communities and projects that are seeking legitimacy and endorsement. So the story might be a little bit longer, and I hope it at least is entertaining. Pensieve, this is what we want to discuss, and but let's go a little bit deeper into the definition of info defense. Apart from what the media are driven by incentive maximization, as we already know. I think we also need to consider, and I think it's not an overestimation, that 50% of the content may already be generated by AI. Back in the days when I was in advertisement, we know, there's a cliche, we know that when you spend on marketing, 50% at least is wasted. We just don't know where it is wasted. But with the AI, it is so cost efficient. You generate content, not only because the content is generated without much human hard labor in it, but also the analysis of whether or not you reach your audience, whether they are really converted to purchase your goods or consume your content, will be so analyzed and then immediately put into optimization of the language model. You will have much more efficient expense and thus improved content that is even more generated to target your emotional surge or giving rise to the sponsors that require certain help. And even more so today, info defense is needed. I hope we are still on time, not for the presentation, but for technology to be there for saving us from the situation that we did not work hard enough to prevent ourselves from. So info defense is about protecting societies and organizations and individuals against the threats related to manipulation, theft, and disruption of information. What are these threats? There's disinformation, wrong idea, social media manipulations with bots, with AIs and everything, cycles, synthetic media and deep fakes, and cyber attacks, infrastructure sabotage, intelligence gathering, insider threats, data breach and leak, all those things that most public folks are unequipped to defend themselves against. And with data themselves, you have most of the time broken links. You cannot really find where is the evidence. There's no data ownership to users. We were talking about digital sovereignty. You don't even have your sole right over your own data. We don't talk about data ownership. Even in today's decentralization technology, we don't have the tech stack that really ensures users owning their own data. Look at the decentralized social media we're using. It's still far from you being able to take your data unplugged and then plug into another applications you want. And of course, the communities are working towards that direction, but we are still quite far from it so far. And there is obviously information disparity. Most important of all, which is what our organization is dealing with, which is a scarcity of legitimacy technology. What does it mean? It means whenever you want to gain support, there are very few ways for you to prove you are legitimate yourself unless you disclose much more privacy. And even at that, it doesn't mean that communities recognize until certain institutions or signals actually are sent your way. And this I think it is an obvious answer to why Web3 communities do not care about privacy. Why? Because if I am wearing a mask now, it does not work as well as if I am exposed with my face. Because trust is hard built. because we need to exchange vulnerability. We need you to recognize that I am the person saying these things, for you to potentially be able to hold me accountable in the future if I had lied. And this is how society works. So even in the Web3 communities, privacy is not something that is new to ourselves. It is something that we know we have to sacrifice in order to get things done. And this is exactly because there is a scarcity in legitimacy technology, which is a social technology itself. So, as always, we put our fingers at what is the problem. It is not a surprisingly shocking thing that I'm going to blame centralization. If you are in this audience, you know that this community is about decentralization. So you have the current flaws in the primitives of information and data handling in control over data, completely centralized, then following with it communication, decision-making, and obvious problem of single points of failure when data are leaked. Ledger at one point in the history was hacked, and then all the addresses and the emails of people who actually purchased Ledger at one point were completely leaked. And these are people who are pioneers in the industry that have their privacy and security exposed to people who the data was sold to, right? Or published to. And what we have is obvious reduce the resilience, asymmetricity, and surveillance in camera. Privacy. But for all of these, I think we are quite familiar already with the issue. And the deeper flaws in the social technical system is that even with the raw data, we don't necessarily have the context to understand, to do the sense making ourselves. And then we do not necessarily, as I mentioned before, own these data and then can disclose them as in the context required, in a protected and a way that only verifies the data versus handling over the data completely. And we have to assume third-party centralized institutions would do good because there's just no alternative. While data going from data to a society or community's wisdom has to go through the process of coming from data and then condensed into information with verified verification process, then it can be shared to the next generation, to new people who come into the space. And this is completely disrupted. That's why, through years of work, and I'm very happy that last year in NapulETH, I was able to already introduce the concept of Pensieve at the dawn of a publication of a white paper. And this year, we are bringing this white paper into a specific use case that would increase legitimacy discovery of projects with ECF.network as a platform itself, using the Pensieve frameworks. It's a little bit of a mouthful. So one is an idea, like the Bitcoin white paper. The other thing is the actual currency, Bitcoin, that is running the ecosystem. And at the same time, you can have all kinds of altcoins based on the Bitcoin idea, and then having different usage themselves. A feature, this idea is about completely decentralizing institutional-grade information systems, so that a decentralized collective database is possible. And the word decentralization is said so much that I have to stress here. It's not only about the data being immutable and decentralized. In this particular case, it's about reaching consensus about what actually happened. So what is knowledge? Knowledge is what we believe it is worth passing down, right? Worth sharing. And they are different community to community and people to people. But as pioneers, as generations that have the responsibility to pass down knowledge to the next generation, there should be certain consensus or ways to coordinate such consensus to consolidate knowledge from information to data and verified facts. And this is why, with all the reasons of info defense and problems of centralization, we introduced this particular Pensieve frameworks. And but why did we land here? So this is a little bit of a story time. We're an organization that was founded in 2018. You might be able to recognize some familiar faces in this founding picture in Tokyo. We were the first grant program, and now we are incubating and then building ourselves the meta coordination level of tools. Pensieve being the most fundamental one on the information and knowledge level, and other tools that include Zulu software that helps community to coordinate in events, in other occasions, and carbonvote.com. If anybody is familiar with the DAO attack, this was the project that helped coordination and legitimized the hard fork. It was nicely donated to my co-founder, donated by my co-founder to ECF for us to continue this coordination tool. As a grant program, anybody asked for grants in their life in crypto before from the audience? None? Anybody give grants? Anybody run a grant program? Okay, good, okay, so someone. These are the challenges, and given that we don't necessarily share the experiences of this, I'm not going to go very deep into it. But as any grant program that has the resources or is looking for the resources to boost up their ecosystem, these are the issues that we face. On top is it's the obvious ones. And underneath, there's a lot of issues within the organization. Then the more juicy part. As ECF goes, because we are an organization that was co-founded by a lot of ecosystem projects, as if you have recognized the leaders in the space, we have even more levels of complexity because it was founded by multiple ecosystems. So you have the coordination issues and high profile, high demanded figures to have calls regularly, but without getting anything done. There's also, by the way, Jared was in vacation, so he wasn't in the picture, but these are the people that are still working very hard in the industry, but at a time, put together their resources and are determined to accelerate the Ethereum adoption and technology, general blockchain technology adoption at the time together. But even with goodwill, even with real resources spent, it was still hard, because of all the reasons that I put on the slides and some of the reasons that I will dig deeper in an article that we will publish next week. Stay tuned for that. But one of the very obvious problems is that we are the centralized, the gatekeeper. There is fragmented knowledge. So it was obvious after a revisit of the grants that the grants were often influenced by personal networks and early managers. And it is also very easy to see that impacts are very limited. And the problem is today, the old model still stands in our industry, in our community. We still resort to institutions to get funding, to get legitimacy, to get discovered. And so what we have is communities end up not really building, but building for chasing legitimacy so that they can have a head start. But what if legitimacy can be grown from within? So that we would not have undiscovered talent, so that the communities can discover the talent themselves and coordinate resource and knowledge themselves. And this is the question we want to ask. The key lies in how we got success in the first place. The success of Bitcoin and Ethereum was not just technological achievements. It is mostly community and coordination. It was the communities that wrote and reviewed the code, ran the nodes, evangelized the mission, defended the values, educated newcomers, coordinated during crisis and forks. And if you look at the projects these days that are really decentralized, resilient, and gaining global adoption, this is the root of how the success became so globalized. So as an organization that is missioned to be flexible, agile, and adaptive, what we want to dig deeper into is not to repeat a direct funding mechanism, because Bitcoin already did it. What we need to do is to coordinate the communities to understand what is good, what is needed, what is ideal. And in order to coordinate that, we need to at least have verified facts that are not controlled by any particular institution. Anytime we want to check information, it is owned by someone. And the data are in a server, except the blockchain data that are financial transactions. So as an organization, what we need to do is to help find this missing piece in the tech stack of social coordination. And it is also in humans' deep nature to seek truth. But seeking it is a complicated, complex work. It requires coordination, collaboration, interpretation, and they are cross-cutting concerns that can influence every level. I'm a Harry Potter fan, so I'm going to quote Dumbledore here. The truth is a beautiful and terrible thing, and should therefore be treated with great caution. Now, this is why we named this mechanism Pensieve. Anybody knows what Pensieve is? It's a magical basin. Dumbledore put his head inside and then, re-examine data, memory. In this case, we want it to be a collective Pensieve. This is a PDF. It's supposed to be a GIF and then, dramatic. Now we enter ECF's Pensieve. It's a new type of decentralized knowledge base. And we think it will defend collective cognitive sovereignty. Does the community even agree on its mission? Is it just written by 1 or 2 people? Did you have to comply with it, right? And so if you are interested, this is the paper. And you can find it if you go to ECF.network, and all the links are there. We are updating the website soon. And I was just told that we are supposed to close it in soon so that we can have a little bit of a Q&A, but I want to at least give you guys the idea of why it will help emerging communities and projects. With this Pensieve mechanism, we could do a lot of things. Any wiki can be decentralized. I was also told that Decentralized Wikimedia Foundation is thinking about it. I think we have a head start, and if anyone is hearing it, contact us. We're interested in collaborate. But any knowledge base, dictionary, ontology, community mission, they can all be decentralized with this reputation-based, identity-agnostic system that doesn't care about who you are. And it's very easy. Go to pensieve.ecf.network. You could propose any project that you think is accountable and legitimate with filling some basic information. Anybody. But I have to say that we are in alpha, so you need an invite code. So I'll let you guys scan the code to get invite code permissionlessly. You just need to introduce what you're working on. So we have a little bit of a controlled alpha that does not completely crash the server at this point. And then after mechanism checking, we will be leveraging completely decentralized technology to have it as a immutable ledger of our collective memory. So this is phase 1. Squeeze in if you can, because as we all know this, we would generously reward our early adopters, as history also evidenced. So what you would do is you propose a project, but other people can verify. The funny thing is, it means that even if you are the owner or founder of a certain project, you do not necessarily have the ultimate say of what is true. And this allows community to verify, validate, and give and disclose more truth about projects and surface accountable projects in aspects that are not necessarily checked or are in databases that are in certain grant programs or VC's own emails. I'm supposed to completely cut it, just a little bit of a peek of the interfaces. On top of the decentralized knowledge base itself, we as ECF are biased for certain projects, but we completely open source how we evaluate with 200 items that are not completely launched yet because we need to consider ZK protection for certain items that regard identity. And at the same time, we encourage reference to be put. So if your projects are working on online to on-chain tools, completely decentralized on-chain tools, we encourage you to come forward just like Sablier does, so that when people put the reference, it has a higher weight in decentralized verifiable verification of the claim of your information. Identity is not relevant. We analyze by just looking at behavior of the users. So this is an experimentation. If you're interested in getting the alpha code, technical collaboration, research together how to evaluate and surface legitimate projects, scan this code. This is our Discord. It's not as private and decentralized as we want, but unfortunately this is where people are at the moment. And then follow us at ECF, Ethereum ECF, and join us to make this missing piece of the social tech stack come out as soon as possible. Thank you, guys.